Today, we're talking about something you may be overlooking that's killing your growth in youth ministry.
Welcome to the Ministry Coach Podcast, where we bring you weekly tips and tactics to help you fast track the growth and health of your youth ministry. If this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Jeff Lascola, and this is
Kristen Lascola.
And speaking of growth and health, today we're going to go over something that might get overlooked, might seem like something you don't need to even pay attention to, but can be huge for growth or lack of growth in your ministry.
Yeah, it could be one of those sneaky growth killers that maybe you don't suspect.
Right.
But when it comes to growth, we've been talking about this topic a lot lately. And it's one of those things that I think over time, you just try all these different things because it's super hard to diagnose what the single problem is of why your youth ministry isn't growing. It could be a lot of things.
Right.
And so you can kind of, if you're willing to put in the time and effort in a season of diagnosis, you can keep trying things and being intentional in certain areas and see if that might be the area that is guilty, or responsible, I guess I should say, for your lack of growth. And so today we're going to talk about the lack of consistency in your youth ministry, whether that's the lack of consistency in you personally as the leader, as the face of the ministry, or the lack of consistency in your program habits, or maybe your team. And I think there's little tidbits where we can learn from each one of those today to kind of look at each area under a bit of a microscope to say, how consistent am I in this area? So why be consistent? Well, consistency, I was thinking about it, and I think it breeds 5 things. And so here's why we need to be consistent is consistency breeds trust. And that's trust mostly from the people that you serve, that you're on top of it and that you have a firm grip on the steering wheel of this ministry. It just makes them trust your abilities.
Okay, so it seems a little less fly-by-night program kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think this one's important, especially when people are entrusting their children to you. And it's a family investment. Like families are going to invest time and resources into certain things, and they're going to invest it into people who they trust. And consistency breeds that. It also breeds loyalty, kind of what we were just talking about. They're going to be loyal or have buy-in to certain programs. Like, our kid isn't going to be on a soccer team, in gymnastics, doing dance, go to school, be an ice skater. Like, I'm going to pick 1 or 2 things for them, or they're going to pick them when they're older. And our daughter was a part of a program once that no matter how much she liked it, I couldn't stand it as the parent because of it was impossible to find information and it was super, like, I didn't know the dates that they were canceled. It was expensive. I didn't think it was a good value. And so she's like, I like it. And I'm like, I'm not wasting my time there. Like, you're finding a new hobby. So we need to understand that this is a family investment. No matter how much a child has a good time when they're with you at your youth group or at church or whatever, if you're not being consistent to the point where parents can feel like they can fully jump in with you, you might lose a family. It also breeds participation because they can participate. We've talked about this idea before. If you make people hunt for information or hunt for details, like, they're just like, peace out. Like, if I have to do work to make this work, not going to happen. So they will participate when you are consistent. It breeds support. And what the majority of what we're going to talk about today, it does breed growth. So we're going to talk about 4 areas that are important to be consistent in, and for you to kind of do the self-assessment of how consistent am I in these areas. And especially for you young youth pastors, I think there's this tendency where we can kind of hide behind like, whatever, like, don't tie me down. Like, I'm fun. Like, it's organic. It just sort of like flows. It's a vibe. And it's like, all those things could be true, but you can also be consistent.
Yeah.
And so I think like, don't let it be this like vibe killer in your ministry to like have to buckle down and be consistent, but realize it's going to bring you to your ultimate goal of growth. So number one, be consistent with when and where you meet. And the when, well, let's start with the where, because there is a time and a place to do an offsite activity. So we do Chaos, that's the name of our youth group, at the beach one Tuesday in August. Mm-hmm. And then we do one small group night out. But other than that, we really do meet at the church every single Tuesday. And I know different youth groups, it's like, let's meet at a different house at every Wednesday during the summer, or different things like that. And here's why that's a bad idea. Sounds like a good idea. Like, we're keeping it fresh. Mm-hmm. We're keeping it is a growth killer, because the visitor cannot follow it and new people cannot get on board, because the new people don't know. I'm not going to just show up at someone's house, number one, and then a different house next week. And unless they're coming with a friend or something, but I get new kids all the time that are just like, hi, this is my son and we're new. And we heard you guys meet on Tuesday nights. Oh yeah, let me show you around. But if they drive up to a dark and locked church on a Tuesday, like, oh wait, today's the third Tuesday of the month. And oh, I think they're having a pool party. And it's just like, no, it doesn't work. And I would love it to work, because it sounds like, oh, it's fun and it's building community. It's only building community with those you already have. And so again, we're talking about growth killer. So if you're not interested in growth, go ahead. But if you're interested in growth, you have to be open. Like, think of it as business hours. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is. We live in a small town, and man, these business owners just decide,
right,
well, I want to sleep in today. I don't know what
their hours are. Suggestions.
Their hours are whenever I feel like being there. And I was trying to get my vacuum cleaner fixed once, and I just finally gave up, and I drove 30 minutes to Oceanside, because I'm like, I can't do this. Like, be there. And that's how people feel if they come to your youth group and it's like, where are you?
Right.
Oh, you changed the time, or oh, you changed the place, or oh, you guys are off campus and you're doing this literally 2 weeks out of the year. And we communicate it so ahead of time at small group night out, which is a great community builder for the small group, but it does make me cringe. Like, if we were supposed to have a visitor on that night, kiss them goodbye, unless they'll come back the next week. And so do that so sparingly. Keep your time and place consistent so that visitors can find you. Okay.
And always make sure that you put the address on calendars, on flyers, anything that you're handing out. I've seen a lot of churches do like, here's a flyer, and it'll just be like some cool, night or whatever. It's like, there's no information on there. I mean, maybe the time, but it's like, if I don't know specifically where you guys meet, how would I know that? So it's almost like, here's an insider club flyer. So it's like, if you already know, if it's a speakeasy, like if you know how to get there, you're cool. Yeah. But it's like, if anybody knew, they're gonna be like, I don't know where this even is.
And that, you hit on like one of the big values at North Coast is like this, we stay away as much as we can from anything that could appear to be insider language. And so like, our church is called North Coast Church, and people like to abbreviate it NCC. And leadership will be like, don't do that, because new people are like, even though it might seem obvious, like NCC, North Coast Church, but he's like, don't act like there's an inside, because then people aren't like, you breed this exclusivity, kind of feeling, and we never want to do that.
So your youth group is called Chaos. So you'd basically, on a flyer, you wouldn't just say Chaos meeting at da-da-da-da-da. You would say,
it's helpful to say the middle school ministry of North Coast Church.
So there's an affiliation there.
Exactly. And as you were talking too, it reminded me another thing. If you are going to do an off-campus event, at the very least, I would put a flyer on the door and say, hey, tonight we're at the beach.
Closed.
We'll be here next week for a regularly scheduled programming. If you'd like to join us, text me and I'll put my phone number on there and I'll direct you to where we are, so at least you're giving them a resource. And if they don't take you up on it, at least they know like, okay, like they're not just like, maybe we're here, maybe we're
There's
not.
a reason we're not here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the next thing too is do not cancel. Like, don't make that a habit of like, oh, we're going to cancel tonight.
Yeah.
Don't make that a random thing. If there is some kind of family emergency, and even then, most of the time you can find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
I've had family emergencies happen and I can't be at youth group. It doesn't mean youth group doesn't happen. Just because Kristen's not there doesn't mean it doesn't go. And so who do you have in place that you could at the last minute just say like, hey, can you take this and run with it? Is it an associate pastor? Is it a youth intern? Is it a high capacity volunteer? Is it your senior pastor? I don't know. Go down the list to the most ideal to the least ideal, but the rule is you don't cancel.
Right. Unless it's like extreme weather. We don't get that here.
I think we had wildfire threats and everyone was evacuating. So we had to cancel. But
other parts of the country obviously have snow days and things like that. And I've seen that where it's like youth groups canceled, churches canceled. I've seen that too.
And these are for the like extreme
right,
where everyone's texting you like, oh my gosh, are we still meeting tonight? So that it would be understood. But meaning like if you're going on vacation, don't cancel youth group. You find someone to fill in. If you have another commitment that you can't get out of, it happens to fall on the night of your youth group, don't cancel it. Don't make the habit of canceling, because then people get in their mind, are we having it? Are we not? And the more times people show up and the lights are off and it's locked and they're like, what? It's Tuesday or it's Wednesday. What's going on? You're starting to take away from those 5 things that we talked about: the trust, the loyalty, the buy-in, the participation, support, growth. You start to chip away at that. Like, you have to be there. Even if it's not ideal, something happening is better than nothing. And that's something that North Coast has operated under for a long time, is have something, just find a way rather than nothing, and get creative. Like, okay, maybe they go in with high school and it's like a preview weekend and like they play a cool game. I don't know. You can just figure it out, but don't cancel. And then lastly, on number 1, we've talked about this before and I think we've hit it fairly well already, but like summer, again, people like to do weird stuff. Don't be weird over summer. Make it consistent. Again, we do one off campus during the summer at the beach. Other than that, we're there. To get creative, we go an extra hour. We call it Super Chaos, and it's like an extra long one with fun games. And so get creative within the time and place that you already have promised. Don't feel like you have to go all over the place. We do events, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking specifically about program night. Again, why? The visitor, business hours, open sign. They need to come without that weird, like, shoot, I must be on the outside because everyone knew not to come.
Yeah.
So don't do weird stuff over the summer. Be there, be in your times. Don't cancel small groups. Don't cancel program. Keep things running and humming along for growth. All right. Number 2, be consistent with your communication. And so I've kind of broken this down into daily, weekly, quarterly communication. So I'm not perfect at this. My intern runs our social media, Caleb, and he does a really, really good job. And I would like for that to be daily communication. So it's not always daily, but it's definitely the day before program, day of program, and then sometimes a random recap throughout the week or poll or something fun like that. So your communication daily would probably fall into social media. And then consistently on a day of the week of your choosing, send out your weekly communication. And this is going to look like an email, most likely, unless you have like a texting service or a texting app or something that you do. I like an email because you can attach documents to it. I attach permission slips and links and stuff like that a whole lot, and videos, whatever it might be that parents need to see. But Monday, I've told you guys a million times, Monday is my communication day. I tell parents, this is the series we're in. Here's what you need to know about upcoming events. Here's the talk sheet we're going to be using in our small groups tomorrow night. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. And when the middle part where I say, here's what you need to know coming up, what do I give them? Kind of like what you're saying. We give them dates. We give them times, locations, supplies, what they need to bring, attach that permission slip for them, link the sign up, whatever it needs to be. Your goal is to make everything so easy for them. That one stop, like, oh, Kristen sent me everything I need. I don't have to like go to northcoastchurch.com and try to find stuff. It's like, here it is. I did all the work for you. Here you go. So that's weekly communication. And then again, we've talked about this before. Then quarterly communication would look like a seasonal calendar. I do it in 3-month chunks, like I told you guys. I do a hard copy to pass out, and then it's also posted on our website. But whatever is there, I still email that stuff every week because people forget. I had a question come through recently. A listener emailed us saying, well, why not just send them the year calendar? And then there you go. You have it all. And the reason is because people are not going to keep it. So they're going to say January through December, how wonderful. Oh, shoot, where did that go? And then also, I feel like when you give them something new every quarter, it reignites interest and participation. And it seems like, oh, new.
Right.
Like, you know, rather than just like, oh, this was like the school calendar we had so I give them big dates consistently, like summer camps coming up July 7th through the 14th or whatever. And so they have those big things, but then I keep the other things kind of like, all right, here, hot off the press is our new calendar, like a new issue kind of thing. And so that is how to be consistent with communication.
So if you're doing like January, February, March on one calendar, when do you send out April, May, June?
So it would be by season. So it'd be December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November.
June, July, August. When would you send out that calendar? So just the month before?
The end of May. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not a lot of planning time though for some.
Again, if it's big events where they would need, because we don't start promoting just like overnighters until a month before.
Okay.
If something needs signups. And if it's just like youth group is going till 10 o'clock tonight, it's like, you don't need a whole lot of a heads up.
Plan your vacation around that.
Right.
Okay.
So the big stuff that you need to plan your vacation around, we drip that stuff in, but other things, it's like when we're ready to promote it, like 4 to 3 weeks in advance. Otherwise it gets stale too. You know, you want to keep the urgency, like signups are limited, you know, rather than just like, you know, I don't know, but I could be convinced otherwise. Okay, number 3. Now this comes to your students. Challenge your leaders. And I'll get into student leaders. That's why I said that. But challenge your leaders to be consistent. So small group leaders, this is a big one. And a lot of frustration can happen around this. But your job as the pastor is to try to create a culture of consistency with your leaders. Now, I go to a 2-leader small group model because people have busy lives and there's a lot going on, and one leader has to work later, and one leader doesn't get a babysitter, and another one has a test and they're doing finals. And there's a lot of people that are in and out. And so if you have 2 leaders per group, it's not as huge of a hit when one leader misses, but the goal is to have both leaders there every week. And the reason for that is obvious because relationships can't grow without consistency. So this is kind of up for you. And this is the big challenge as the pastor of pushing your leaders towards consistency. And I've, over the years, to be honest, I hate to say it, but it is true. I have let volunteers, I hate firing volunteers. It's like the worst. You're like, you're a volunteer, like you're the best. Like you're giving your time freely to me, but I've had them step down simply for lack of consistency, you know, just saying things like, you know, I don't know that this ministry really fits into your life right now because you're so awesome. And I wish you could be here more. And the students miss you so much. And it's just so hard when we only see you once or twice a month.
Can't count on you.
Right. And that's such a bummer, but you know, just harping on your leaders of how important like these 2 hours of the week are, guys. Like just do everything you can to be here. But if you can't, make sure you communicate with me. You know, I do understand life happens, you know, and so you don't want it to be like so strict, but you do want to just be able to communicate. This is important that you're here. It's not just like, if I can. And I think I've made mistakes. I must have made mistakes with certain leaders before because I feel like they came in with this idea of like, if I can make it, great. If I can't, no big. And it's like,
and I think that comes with the idea of a volunteer. It's like, hey, I'm free labor, man.
Right.
Like, I don't owe you anything. Do you ever make them commit to like, hey, 6 months?
Yeah.
Or, whatever it is.
That's exactly what
you
It is 6 months. When we're interviewing leaders, I say, hey, can you at least commit to the next 6 months of ministry? I really like them. Like, could you, and it depends when they come in, but it's like, I hate when they leave before the school year is over, because it's like just mid-year, you just leave. It's like nice to at least get that, like, hey, could you stay until summer? When the grade transitions are happening anyways, it's a little bit more understandable than just like, it's February, goodbye, like, what? Now we have a new small group leader. Like, I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, I do ask for a 6-month commitment and nobody has ever said no, but also there's a lot of leaders that just are more like, all of a sudden, like the night was so busy. And then I'll think back like, where the heck was so-and-so?
Right.
Like they didn't even show up tonight, And like I said, I've had that talk, but also in that same vein, student leaders being consistent to me is really important. So I have a student leadership team, and one of the requirements of them is I want you guys here 75% of the time, because your presence and like you guys being the core, you flavor everything we do. You pump energy into everything we do. Like they're the ones who kind of welcome new kids and show new kids what it's all about. So if my student leaders are missing, we're deflated. And so I say, if there's 4 Tuesdays in a month, I want you there at least 3.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
It's reasonable. And they have jobs to do, so they're there. But the leadership being consistent is a very big deal. And then lastly, number 4, consistent with your program elements, meaning like just how I was saying before, like on number 2, like don't cancel, like don't just like, oh, it's no big deal, we'll be back next week. Well, okay, for the 4 kids who are like your ride or die, they probably won't care, but that doesn't foster growth. In the same way, canceling program elements just because you forgot or didn't plan or someone was sick. Like the thing that drives me crazy is like, it's hard to find worship replacements, but I can't be like, oh, well, I guess we just won't have worship tonight. Yeah. No, find somebody. Like one time we had this girl who barely played guitar and she did it and it was horrible, but I'm like, we had worship. And I just want, and that goes against my nature, because my nature is more like, if you can't do it well, don't do it. But I feel like, come on, like you can get something in there. Yeah. Like don't cancel worship, or like, oh, I forgot to pick up the pizza. I guess we don't have pizza tonight. Or like, oh, I didn't plan a game. Shoot. How about dodgeball? Cause like I can just go grab the balls real quick.
We have several episodes of no prep games, so that's not an excuse.
But I mean like in front of students to act so like, oh, hey guys, oh shoot. Like, oh, I'm
they
so
look
tired,
forward to
or I didn't have time to plan.
If they know something's going to happen, it's like, I love it how every night we do this. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we forgot that. Who cares? They might be like, bummer.
But exactly what you just said. Who cares? So what is that communicating? Value.
Right.
Like when you plan, when you're consistent, when they can come and know, I know I'm going to buy my pizza and then I'm going to go play this and then I'm going to get a great message and worship and small group, when they know, instead of just saying like, oh, like we decide not to do it tonight. I don't know. We're just going to chill. Like that communicates value, that this was not valuable enough for you to pour the time, energy, and commitment into to keep these program consistence element. And I'm not, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about special occasions. Like we did our big Christmas party. We may or may not do worship, stuff like that. But I'm just saying it's because we spent so much time doing this, so it's never just for a lack of planning or just like, hey, no big, like we're just going to chill. That's not the reason. So here's the bottom line. And this was, I think, in all of what we're saying, attention to these kinds of details that we're talking about subliminally.
Ooh, that was close. You almost got it. Try again.
Subliminally.
Subliminally.
Shut up. Communicates the size of your group. So you are subliminally, nailed it, communicating the size of your group by these consistencies. So if you are inconsistent and lazy on some of these areas, you're communicating, this is just a small church, like our small town, who if you were Trader Joe's, you can't just say like, I'll come in at 10 today. You can't do that. But if you're mom and pop's like produce shop, you can be like, it's no big. So you're communicating, we're small. And we're going to be small. And so I always like to function, even when I was small, function as if you're not small. Like, what are the standards that would have to be in place for Trader Joe's? Everything's organized, everything's stocked. People are ready when the doors open, the lights go on at the same time every day, and customers come in and they know they can get their favorite thing, and the clerks are friendly and there's bags available. Like, everything's organized. But when you go into these other stores, like, oh, our credit card machine's broken. Do you have cash? Oh, okay. Well, I can't break a 20. Can you go over there and ask them if they have ones? You're just like, do you want me to shop here? Because and these are based on real events. This is like,
well, you hit a nerve here, I think.
I'm not coming back. But I think that same human nature thing applies. And I think sometimes we're like, yeah, but it's like, who cares as long as the spirit's moving? But you have to understand human nature. We are ministering to humans. Humans inherently have human nature, and the uber super spiritual people who are so mature and far along in their faith, probably, you're right, wouldn't care whether the pizza was there or the dodgeball was planned or the flyers were printed and informative. They might not. They might just be like, as long as the Holy Spirit's moving, I don't care. But we have to account for human nature in everything we do. We're ministering to people, and they cannot be divorced of their human nature. So we crack the code on human nature so that it is incredibly easy for them to come to church and to love it, to hear the word of God by whatever means necessary. Get them in the door, make them love it, and then preach your face off so that they hear the word of God. But don't, like, it's this pious thing. I feel like this weird pride or like pharisaical weird vibe when you're just like, that stuff shouldn't matter. But it does. So who cares if it should or shouldn't? It does. So go with it and put the gospel in there and don't let them get away. Like, isn't that ultimately what we want? To crack the code on what people need and want so that they can hear the word of God? So cater to human nature, aside from sin and compromise, obviously, but crack the code on human nature so that you can get them there. And I think we need to just make sure our own pride doesn't get in the way of, well, that shouldn't matter. I don't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I had a pastor once, and he and I were supposed to do this event together, and he totally flaked on me, like, just wasn't even there. And I wrote him an email like, hey, like, what happened? Like, you didn't show up, like, blah, blah. You should have reminded me, like, or he said something like, next time you'll have to remind me, like, when we're getting closer to the time. I'm like, no. Or you can write it in your calendar and show up when you say you're going to. And it was like this weird thing of like, hey, the ball being dropped is like, it's on you.
Kind of more your fault than mine.
No, it's not. Like,
me screwing up is really more your problem.
I don't know if that actually was an illustration for what we're talking about, but it made me really mad. And I just wanted to talk about it tonight because it was so rude. Like, what do you mean remind you? Us planning
and if
it
you
was
could
a
drive
reminder.
me there, that would be like, very nice.
I think what I'm saying is personal responsibility goes a long way.
I don't know if this was totally on track the whole time, but you were definitely on fire here.
I got a little like
struck a chord.
Yeah. I feel like it was good. It was passionate.
I liked it.
At the end.
I was a spectator in this one, so that's fine. Hey, we wanted to tell you guys, I'm not sure if you saw a few episodes back, we did announce that we now have a Patreon account. For those of you who aren't familiar with what Patreon is, it's basically just a way to support this ministry. And you can check it out at patreon.com/ministrycoach. We'll link it in the show notes. But we've had our first Hall of Famer contributor, Wes Tice. So thank you so much,
Whoa,
Wes.
it sounds like a celebrity.
He is a celebrity
Tice.
in our world. He's a celebrity.
Thanks, Wes.
So we thank you for your support. And if you guys want to support this ministry, go ahead and go there. And that's a way that you can do that. We also would appreciate your prayers, because that is another way that you can support this ministry. And then also, obviously, like, subscribe, and comment below.
My favorite part is the comments, because I love to hear.
Well, we'll do the comment at the end, but yes.
Yeah, like, isn't it fun to hear, like, how it impacted someone?
Totally.
Like, to me, that is payment of, like, cool. Like, this hit you exactly where you're at. Like, that was a God thing. Like, awesome. Like, that gives, like, wind in my sails.
Totally.
And I'm a words of affirmation person. Like, words mean a lot to me.
I had a guy come up to me one time and said, "But what do words mean?" I was like, "I guess just the definition of each and every one. I don't know."
He was trying to have a deep moment with
was,
you.
and it right over my head, which doesn't take much.
You're so shallow.
That's true. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do a question of the day right now, which is, what is a hair trend, style trend, that you participated in at one point in your life and regret?
One that you used to make fun of me for all the time. So before Jeff and I got married, we were friends. In fact, he was one of my volunteers.
Woo!
He led a small group and led worship and all kinds of stuff. And I had a season where I ordered these things called bumpets. I don't know if anyone remembers them, but they were like these plastic. They were like curved, and you were supposed to put them in your hair so that your hair was like poofed up and like bumped up. And it came with a big one for like the crown area. And then there was like the little mini bump it so that you could like bump your little bangs up.
Yeah.
And it would never stay in my hair. It was always like falling out and stuff. And so Jeff would always make fun of me for my bumpets, and he drew a picture of me once with my bumpet, and it said, "Hi, can you like not be annoying?"
I faxed it to you because you needed to test your fax machine or something. So I drew a cartoon of her with her stupid bumpet,
and it like said "bump it" with an arrow to the hair, and then it said, "Hi, can you like not be annoying?" I'm like, is that what I say?
Yeah, that's what you sound like too.
And that was before we got married, so that's interesting that
I still
you were
annoyed you
annoying
then.
back then too.
I'm consistent. Consistency matters. So what I'd give to have
I was gonna say, you're
a
probably just
hairstyle
jealous of
now
my
that I
hair.
can kind of just do whatever.
He took his hat off. Somebody said that like in one of the comments once. Does Jeff ever take his hat off?
There's a shine that the lights give off, and it makes me look like a Christmas ornament.
There's a shine in the light of your head. It's on fire.
No, so I think I was in my late teens maybe when I did this one. I not shaved my head, but I cut it like really short, but I left. Now I will say this: I don't know if this is ever a trend, but this is what I did. Okay, I shaved my head or cut it really short, but I left the front longer.
That was a trend. I remember that.
Kind of like raver style, but I wasn't a raver,
I
which was
imagine you
weird.
in a tank top.
I don't know about that. But I dyed it blonde, except the front was like brown, which was my natural hair color.
Gross.
It gets better.
Oh.
I then I didn't braid. I had it braided, kind of like, remember Coolio?
Yeah.
And they kind of would go everywhere. So the front of my hair, it was like all over the place.
Did you
these
have
braids.
a job during this time?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I worked at a pizza restaurant, and when I just wore a hat. I feel like I've worn a hat since I was like
That's probably why
born,
you lost your
basically.
hair.
I know.
You
Don't
suffocated
wear a
it.
hat all the time. No, but I had a job at a pizza restaurant, and when I was in the back, like washing dishes or whatever, I would just take my hat off, and the manager came in and saw me. And it's like when you'd wear a hat and then take your hat off, it would like make those braids like stick straight up. And he kind of just stared at me for a few minutes, and he's like, "You wear a hat when you're like out front and everything, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, carry on then."
Carry on, my wayward son.
All right, let's do a community comment
I thought
of
we
the
already
day.
did. Oh, no,
we
that
haven't
was
gotten
Wes
to it.
Tice.
Yes, Wes Tice. Thank you again, Wes.
Wes Tice.
All right, this is we're getting derailed tonight. All right, this is from Matt Kearns, who says, "Great channel with lots of good content and ideas. I love the enthusiasm you both bring." I think we brought a lot of enthusiasm tonight. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
This episode I feel like really ramped up towards the end.
Yeah.
You got all fired up and were like spitting fire and snorting. So, anyways, we thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Oh, please comment below what your trend,
weird hairstyle.
Yeah, like whether it was in style or not, that you maybe regret.
And if you had Dora the Explorer bangs, please comment. I want to know.
That's still in style, isn't it?
Is
for some people.
Okay, maybe.
So, anyways, thank you guys for watching and listening. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.